Mizzou is the topic today on SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast presented by Big O Tires. It's Tuesday, February 25th, and I'm Blair Kirchhoff. The Tigers have looked better over the past few weeks and could be playing their way into postseason consideration. We talk about this and several other topics with Missouri beat writer Souichi Terada and star columnist Vahe Gregorian. A note, after the break, we fumble around with the name. I want to apologize for not being better prepared to pronounce Connor Bazelak correctly when we originally recorded the episode. At any rate, here we go with Souichi and Vahe. Vahe and Souichi are here.
Feels good.
It's great to have you, my friend. Yeah. It really is. To get you in the studio is, well, an honor above all. But
oh, that's a lot of pressure.
You know the expression, you always leave us wanting more because we just don't see you enough. It has nothing to do with whether we really enjoy you. It's just we don't see you enough.
Yeah. First time this year in 2020 I've been in the newsroom.
How about that?
It just so happened that there was barbecue here, but we won't talk about that.
What a coincidence. What a coincidence. It was barbecue day here at the Star.
It was funny walking in today, seeing all these people in here. I was like, what is going on? A guy comes in from Columbia, another guy from Lawrence. Huh.
I love the confidence with which Souichi came into the studio today. You and I lugged our laptops in here just to be sure of ourselves on some of these topics. We're talking Missouri and the Tigers, but Souichi, the Mizzou beat guy, just saunters in here and says, I don't need no stinking laptop.
No, he's just spiking the ball. We don't even have the ball, he's spiking it. The thing that I also want to make clear is that I did come in here. I think we like to take our audience behind the scenes with us. I also brought my computer in because I can't make the S key work. So Blair and Souichi were kind enough to help me come up with words that didn't involve S to ask our help desk to come visit.
Right, and if he had to type his name, it'd be Uichi.
Yeah,
right
now. Yeah.
By the way, elephant in the room, but don't you enjoy being able to say names like Souichi and Vahe all at once? Who gets to do that?
Nobody does. No, just vowels all over the place. There's just scattered all over the table here. Yeah, as if Blair's a real common name.
I didn't mean to demean you with that.
You want to pick up your keys, Souichi?
Since you don't have a computer
real
to drop.
So we kind of impressed with what Missouri basketball has been doing here the last couple of weeks. I was so encouraged by how they were playing heading into the weekend. I really kind of liked their chances at Arkansas, and they got off to such a great start. What happened down there?
Yeah, they got off to a 13-point start. 10 minutes into the game, they were up 13. And then they go scoreless for 5 minutes. And then next thing you know, Arkansas has a lead at halftime. I think the weird thing with those two teams, and they play every year because...
Twice a year.
Yeah, twice a year, just because of the way SEC scheduling works. They split every game pretty much for however many years. I haven't been here that long, but I know that much. If you're looking at it for the rest of the season, I think that was a very droppable game, realistically. The other 4 games are very winnable as well. But Arkansas on the road, 5-game losing streak, they were probably a little desperate. NCAA Tournament hopes took a big shot. So I think you just kind of tip your hat to them, especially when you make 3 straight threes to end the game. And
yeah.
Mizzou got it down to 2 points. Then Arkansas hits back-to-back threes. They got it back down to 3 again with a minute left. Arkansas hits another 3. So it's just one of those teams or games where teams shoot 48%, 12 for 25 from 3, and you just kind of be like, okay, let's go to the next one. That one is just, everything is against you, and you just kind of accept it. And I think fans kind of accepted that as well. They weren't as mad as I anticipated them being compared to earlier in the season.
Yeah, so this is your first year covering Mizzou, and your first experience covering a team whose fan base can get emotional. As can all fan bases.
Yeah.
But I think Mizzou's maybe a little more kind of success starved than some others in the SEC for sure.
For sure. And look, you've made this point. In fact, I think you made it maybe to one of our last visits to the Tiger Club, that few, if any, fan bases need a national championship like the Missouri fan base, which has 2 to fall back on, and both are more than 50 years ago. And
in non-revenue sports, basically.
Yeah, non-revenue sports. Norm Stewart, I think I've used this line before, but twirling a 13-hitter in the College World Series to put away
Is it Rollins?
Loris Rollins. Yeah. And then an indoor track thing. So I think that's what you walk into from your Michigan State background, and it's quite a contrast. And I'm sure it is a real contrast. I think I've seen you make some references to just the attendance, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, not to take away from Mizzou fans because they've had a couple showings the past few weeks, but I mean, going from the Breslin Center, sitting, among their student section that kind of spans the court and everything, to Mizzou Arena where, I'm not, once again, I don't want to knock Mizzou fans just because, if you're playing at Wofford on a weekday night, only so many fans are going to come out to that. But at the same time, it's just, it's weird going from, my senior year last year, they made a Final Four. Mizzou has never made a Final Four. So putting context behind it, I think, like Blair mentioned, you really do want to see Mizzou have some success just because that fan base, after all these years, kind of deserves one, right? Just because,
Absolutely. I think no fan base deserves one more than Missouri.
Yeah.
And deserve may not be the right word, but would enjoy it and revel in it.
Yeah.
That fan base needs to wear T-shirts, that say Final Four or college football playoff champion, and they've never gotten to do that.
Yeah. It's kind of like the Chiefs, right? The whole winning the Super Bowl kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And how much Chiefs fans are kind of enjoying it right now. So.
It is funny. I mean, you look just in the last 5, 6, 7 years, right? The Royals after 30 years winning one, and the Chiefs after 50 winning one, and that leaves in our area really. I mean, Missouri, K-State at least has tasted it before, but Missouri's not even tasted it. And I thought, well, go ahead, Blair.
Well, I was going to say, if we're going to just condense it to the teams that we cover on a regular basis. Kansas State hasn't won a national championship in any sport. We talk about Missouri's two. K-State doesn't have one. They don't have an NCAA championship, but they have had the Bill Snyder era of sustained success, which was terrific.
And how many Final Fours? 3?
And have been to 4 Final Fours.
Yeah.
Not one since 1964, but they've got banners in Bramlage Coliseum that not suggest, but define Final Four, appearances.
Yeah.
So they do have that. There is that there.
And within a game or two, several times of playing for a national championship in football.
Yeah, that's right.
In modern times.
And Missouri has been in the Elite Eight in our, since we've been sports writers, a few times.
And a couple games for Missouri, also a game away from playing for a national championship. But it's. But I'm old enough. I'm this many years old. Is that what you kids say now? I'm this many years old. That's the wrong way to use it. I'm old enough to remember when the way into Manhattan was National Debate Championship, not the Bill Snyder Highway.
Yeah, that's right. National Debate
that was
champions.
For many years National Debate Champions.
Yeah.
I guess it's not NCAA sport, right? But yeah.
So against all that, it's been fun actually to talk to you about this, Souichi, because Vahe's covered Missouri for 3 decades, and I've lived here for as long and followed Mizzou, and we, they're a team we cover. It's a school and an athletic program that we cover. It's important enough to cover on a daily basis. And look, I'll be the first to admit that yes, we are the impartial journalists here. We pull for the story, but as we found out we rediscovered in the Chiefs' victory and the Royals 5 years ago, winning's good for business. It's not a bad thing to have the teams that you cover win on a pretty large scale. So, hell, I was pulling for Missouri in the 13 and 14 SEC championship games. I would love to have seen that 13 Missouri team, play for the national championship.
Well, it's tremendously exciting, and one thing that...
Or 07. Maybe the 07 team would be more accurate. The 13 team wouldn't have... I don't know if it would have played for the championship.
I remember if 13 or 14 would have.
Well, I don't know if either one of... I don't... Missouri had, I think, 2 losses going into that.
Yeah, that's right. There were some X factors still at play. It could have...
But 07 for sure, if they'd beaten Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game down in San Antonio.
One thing, though, I really did notice this, and this is where all these worlds merge together, I think, is... I discovered it particularly with the Royals. I mean, you become like almost in the bloodstream of the whole thing when you're covering something that is that intoxicating, sometimes literally, to fans, right? I mean, it's you're a conduit for it, and you kind of feel the story in a different way because it's of such excitement to the community. And I'm sure we felt that way with the Chiefs. I know we'd feel that way with Missouri. We felt that way covering KU events. I mean, you feel the way the fan feels to some degree. I mean, because you're sort of in the thick of it. So it's no doubt it'd be a cool feeling to see one of these things shake loose. And what I can't figure out, by the way, and we're kind of going full circle here, but I really thought this Missouri team had some parts. I still think it has parts, but both you guys are far better equipped. You've seen them a bunch more than I've watched recently. Why aren't those parts gelling the way we might have thought they could?
Yeah, I think the thing you have to point at, and I don't think this is an excuse by any means, but just the injuries. I mean, when you lose a Jeremiah Tillman, and going into the year, Cuonzo spoke so much about Jeremiah and how he's going to be such a big part of the game plan, and you lose that, and then you lose a Mark Smith, who's your best shooter, on a very bad shooting team. It's just those are just so many moving parts. And I mean, when you point at parts, I think you talk about those two, maybe Drew Smith, who's been playing great. And then you look at Xavier Pinson and a few other, kind of role players on the team. But, yeah, I mean, just the injuries, and this is such a big thing for Mizzou, I know, ever since Cuonzo's been here. I mean, when you look at the Porter brothers, they went through, and then you lose Jeremiah. I mean, those are pretty much your best players.
Yeah.
Maybe it's more arguable this year, but the last 2 years before this one, I mean, when you lose your best player and just so much of your offense changes, like, you need a little bit more time to just gel as a team, I think. And then at this point in this year, like, and the players say this a lot, like, you're not really going through hard, extensive practice just because you're so tired. You mostly go through X's and O's. It's maybe like a walkthrough in football. Those are the kind of the practices you go through. And when you lose those two, it takes longer to maybe gel or maybe work those kinks out, especially on offense. And we've seen how bad this Mizzou team can be on offense, just how unwatchable basketball can be at times. So I think those are the injuries. I mean, you have to take those into account when you're speaking about Mizzou this year.
Are they really shooting 30% on threes? 41.
Yes.
Now, listen, they're shooting 41.3 from the field and 30.6 from three. Now, they're holding opponents to less than that, which is amazing, actually. 29.4 threes for opponents. But I guess I expected a little bit smoother operating offensive team for Mizzou this year.
Yeah, and you look at the last 2 years, and Mizzou was actually a good shooting team the last 2 years.
It was, from deep.
Yeah, and I think they were 36.4% around there last year. As we mentioned, I don't have my laptop right in front of me. But
like the fossils do surrounding me.
Yeah, but just say it. Okay, boomer.
I didn't say a player then. But yeah, they're the last 2 years they were two good shooting teams, and they've taken such a fall this year. I mean, Mark is your best shooter, but even he's not having, maybe the best year at shooting threes. And realistically, Drew Smith is probably one of your better three-point shooters, but the sample size is so small, you can't really do too much. And then the guys who are shooting the most, I mean, I'm talking about the Xavier Pinsons, the Mitchell Smithes, the Torrance Watsons. They don't have good percentages either. And a little bit of it, too, I think, is that defenses want them to shoot the threes. I remember specifically the West Virginia game, they missed their first however many threes. And that was and they were all wide open. It's just that West Virginia schemed them, those specific players, to be open. So I think it's a little bit of, it's a little bit of chicken and egg in that, are they bad three-point shooters? Is everyone a bad three-point shooter? Or the three bad three-point shooters actually shooting the most? So that's probably a big part of their offense. And then obviously once you can't shoot threes, they can back the paint. All these other things kind of trickle down from that. So that's probably, when you look at the offense and how bad they've been, you point at that three-point shooting just because it changes so much of what you do.
I think also Tillman's played less than half of the season, so 13 of the 27 games. And when you can't play inside out, you get the ball into Tillman, he could try to score or maybe attract a double team and be able to kick out to an open shooter. Reed Nico has had a terrific year, terrific season, but not the same kind of player that Jeremiah Tillman is.
Yeah, and the thing is, Mizzou still feeds Reed every now and then, but it's not nearly as much frequency as Jeremiah. And Jeremiah, I think the big thing too, and I noticed this in the 12 minutes he played against Texas A&M, there were 2 times Texas A&M just threw double teams at him the moment he touched the ball, and I was like, whoa, this guy hasn't played in a month. He's not as in shape as he probably wants to be, and you still respect that. And I think fans were a little worried. I think on Twitter they were like, oh, how's the chemistry going to look with Jeremiah back? What are we looking at here? Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, look, Jeremiah's still one of your best players. Like, even having him on the floor for 10, 15 minutes changes the game just because of what he's able to do. And so, and once again, not having him really affects that offense. Another thing, too, is I keep going back to that three-point shooting, but when you're shooting so poorly, it affects Jeremiah, too, because teams aren't afraid to throw that double team.
Right.
If you're going to help off, Torrance Watson or Mitchell Smith, yeah, go for it. Let them shoot wide open threes when they're shooting sub 30. So I think that's why fans are maybe a little sour on him. But, if you can shoot even, 35%, it really helps the whole team out, especially Jeremiah, I think. Just giving him a little bit more space to operate down in the post.
So Tillman could have played against Arkansas.
Yeah, so he was available, but Cuonzo after the game said between, not practicing and in shape and going up and down the floor, he kept him out for that reason.
So we're thinking Wednesday at Vandy we might see him on the floor?
Yeah, he'll probably be on a minutes restriction again. He was on about a 10-minute restriction for the Aggies. He played a little bit over because of foul trouble, but they'll probably ease him back into it. And it is pretty late in the season. There's only 4 regular season games left, so no one's really sure how much we're going to see of him, especially if he doesn't play Wednesday against Vanderbilt.
What would it take? I'm trying to remember the structure of the SEC tournament. There's a double bye situation, right?
Yeah, so top 4 gets a double bye.
That's the best. Top 4 get a double bye.
And then 10 through 14, and then 5 through 10 plays in that single bye and doesn't play on that Wednesday, and 11 through 14 plays on that Wednesday, which is probably one of the more depressing days in college basketball. Yeah, so Mizzou currently tied with Arkansas. They do have the tiebreaker, though, so they're 10th. So missing that Wednesday is going to be huge for whatever they want to do the rest of the year. Missing that Wednesday is going to be one of the top priorities down the stretch here.
Is Vandy's 1-13 in conference play?
The one win against LSU, so
good win.
Yeah, great one for them to snap a long SEC losing streak for them.
So if you're Missouri, I'm sure the numbers bear this out. You can't. There's no scenario where you could get a double bye.
Yeah.
But they got a reasonable chance to protect the single bye.
Yeah.
And be playing on only the second most depressing day of the.
Well, those days are more fun because more teams are playing.
Right.
You got some quality teams in there, and then the other conference tournaments are also playing. So that's one of the premier days, I think. Thursday and Friday before Selection Sunday is always a good time.
You're competing with the Big South Championship semifinals on.
You're right. It echoes in a different way.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a break here, and when we come back, we'll continue to talk with Vahe Gregorian and Souichi Terada. Hey, it's Blair. Hey, we have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns we have to offer. And it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. For your convenience, your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. A lot of subscription services won't tell you that. They'll just sneak it on there. We just told you. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. Souichi Terada, the Mizzou beat guy for the Kansas City Star, and columnist Vahe Gregorian are here. We're talking Missouri. Souichi, we were talking basketball before the break. Let's keep it on hoops just for a second and kind of size up Missouri's postseason opportunities. What's out there for the Tigers? Anything, let's say, short of getting to the SEC championship. If they win it, they're the SEC's automatic bid into the NCAA. But even if they get to the title game, you think they've beaten enough good teams to maybe get an at-large. But let's say anything short of that.
Yeah, so a lot of fans just, their eyes lit up, right? The moment he said postseason, they're probably thinking, what are we talking about here? Excuse me. But yeah, NCAA tournament is probably out of the works, even if you went out. Obviously, went out in the SEC tournament, you're in no matter what. But if you went out the last 4, you're not facing very many good teams. You have a couple good wins, but just between the net, quadrant wins, all that things, that's probably off the table. If we're talking NIT, though, that gets a little more interesting just because you're 5-9. If you finish 3-1, which I think is very doable, you have 2 home games, which you've been pretty good at, 5-2 this year, and you have Vanderbilt on the road. So
let's call them all out here. Yeah. So 4 games left, starting with Vanderbilt on Wednesday.
Yep.
Mississippi State
On
in
Saturday,
Columbia on Saturday, and then a week of at Ole Miss,
on that Wednesday.
and then Alabama at home to
Yep.
finish the regular season.
And one quick side note, I think that Wednesday game helps them so much, just because you get an extra day between rest. And Cuonzo's mentioned this, but having that day off on Sunday is so big, because they just played 7 weeks without having a day off. So I think Sunday, like, team probably took a day off, and they're probably feeling very rejuvenated right now. Just a quick side note. So those 4 games, I think if you go 3-1, you finish 8-10. You'll be a game above 500 going into the SEC tournament. So if you go 1-1 there when you're second round game, which is that Thursday, lose on Friday, you're probably looking at an NIT berth. Arkansas last year was 18-16, and they were 8-10 in the SEC, and they got the 5 seed in the NIT. So that's probably right around where Mizzou wants to be, maybe a 5 or 6 seed. They're not hosting a game in the NIT. It's nowhere where you expect it to be before the season, but hey, you're salvaging something after what was a 3-7 start. So I think that means a lot. But NCAA tournament, I think that's probably out unless you win it. But NIT, you're looking pretty good at. I think that's a realistic shot for this team. And I think after such a horrible January, I think that would mean a lot for not just the fan base, but this team, because so many of them are coming back. Besides Reed Nico, this whole team is eligible to come back. So I think that means a lot to this program.
Well, one thing it would mean is they didn't give up on the season, and they didn't
Right. Right.
And when we've seen what they're playing the last couple of weeks that they've improved. But what would it mean to Cuonzo Martin to get back to postseason play? He was in the NCAA tournament his first year.
Yeah.
Had the bottom out year last season when they were 5-13 in league play.
I think it becomes a little rallying point at least, right? I mean, you get rewards. Maybe it is a reward, right? It still is, even if it's NIT. And I think also you think of it as a baseline for further development. You get a chance to get a few more games in. Maybe you have a breakthrough. Maybe you win a couple. What is interesting, and I have no feel for this at all, is with all these guys able to come back, how many like being there? How many are don't really have a reason to have an eye on going anywhere else yet, etc.
Yeah.
It'd be very interesting. It will be very interesting to see what comes out of the season in the few weeks and months after, because I think that'll be a little bit of a testament to where the program stands.
Yeah, and when you speak, maybe leaving early, that's Jeremiah Tillman, right?
Right,
In the room.
yeah.
I haven't heard anything. I don't think anyone's really heard anything on his pro prospects. Jeremiah and I actually sat down for 45 minutes before the season, and we spoke about a lot of things. But the thing that kind of struck me about our conversation then was that he really has an eye for the NBA, and I floated over the idea of overseas, making 6 figures, good living, living in Europe, living it up in Italy, wherever you are. But he really has that eye on the NBA. And talking to a few scouts, I don't think it's there conceivably, especially after this season, very lost season, due to injuries and all that kind of stuff. So I don't want to say he will be back, and I don't want to say he'll be gone. I think that's really up to him, but other factors to consider. I mean, he has a young son. I believe he's around 3-4 years old. So, and he's from East St. Louis, and he straight up told me he wants to provide for his family going forward. So I think that also has to play into consideration. I mean, that is another year where you could be making money, within the States, whether it's G League, maybe the NBA, though doubtful, or overseas. So that's kind of the big thing. But as of right now, I don't think anyone's heard anything. I don't even think Jeremiah knows yet. So that's kind of where they stand.
And what about along the lines of? I mean, there's probably no way to sense this either, but everybody will stay. I mean,
Yeah.
guys, do you think maybe there'll be a typical postseason reassembling? But
Yeah.
I mean, do you have a sense that guys are happy there?
Yeah, I think one guy, I in terms of the attrition, I think everyone should be definitely pretty happy. I think one player fans are kind of curious about is Trey Jackson, because he's shown some things. Detroit native, by the way. I just got it. We spoke about it. We kind of grew up near each other. So I'm a little bit.
Put it out there.
Just put it out there. We had our moment.
Game knows game. Is that the expression?
Yeah, but Trey's had inconsistent minutes, so a lot of fans were kind of like, is he mad or anything? By all indications, from Cuonzo, Trey, a few other teammates, it seems like Trey is a very coachable kid, and he's kind of embraced the this is it might suck for me right now, but it's going to be good for me in the future. That's kind of what it sounds like, and Cuonzo has said it a few times, and that's kind of why I believe it, because I don't think Cuonzo would say that and wouldn't mean it if he if he's talking on the record and everything. So, but besides that, maybe Princeton might dabble in the NBA waters, go through the workouts, but I mean, I think he's listed at 170 pounds. I won't fly in the NBA, so he'll probably be back next year.
One thing I want to add to your point about Cuonzo, I've actually talked to him about this aspect of when he speaks on things. He will leave it vague if he thinks he can't say it with conviction.
Mm-hmm.
But he absolutely believes the power of his word is very important, and that he shouldn't speak stronger than he feels about things.
Yeah.
And he'll turn it a different direction. He'll do that, but he wouldn't say that stuff if he didn't mean it. I really believe that.
Yeah. I mean, from covering him for a season and just talking to him off the court, he seems, by all indications, like a very thoughtful guy. There was that viral video clip of about a week and a half ago that he was talking about, his life and everything he's been through and everything like that. So I do believe, I'm not doubting you or anything.
No, but you need to see it for yourself too, and it's easy you could disagree too.
So that's kind of where Cuonzo stands.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say what you did about Trey Jackson, because he came in a little more ballyhooed than
because he was the
guy than Kobe Brown.
Yeah.
And Kobe's the one that had the good game at Arkansas, has been I guess the more impressive of those two. But I kind of like the idea of those two being around for another year or two. I think there's some really nice upside with both of those players.
Yeah, and the thing about Kobe that I kind of think was interesting was that right now he's a forward, 6'7". That's a good wing, maybe a smallerish forward. But Cuonzo actually mentioned a few weeks ago that he projects Kobe to be more of a guard, maybe even a point guard. I don't know if he'll develop that far, but he did show a little bit of handles. He had a nice fast break layup against Arkansas. So, in Trey, I think when you speak athleticism of this team, you used to look at Trey and Pinson. When you talk about projecting out and being like a solid 4-year college player, I think you look at a Kobe Brown, who he might develop into one of those playmakers one day.
All right, let's switch sports just as we wrap it up. You were reminding us that spring football at Missouri begins in less than 2 weeks.
Yeah, March 7th.
March 7th, a Saturday, and Eli Drinkwitz's first spring with the Tigers. We haven't talked to you since he wrapped up his first recruiting class. Where'd that come in? What was their ranking? I'll look it up as we try to guess at a number here.
Yeah, so the ranking itself isn't going to be good just because of the sheer size. That's kind of one thing I don't like about sites.
That's right.
They do like a cumulative thing instead of like a quality thing. So you could have 12 guys. You could have 12 4-stars, but if another school brings in 21 mixed like 3 4-stars and a bunch of 3-stars, then they're gonna end up having a better recruited ranking class. But I think for all considerations, Drinkwitz did a pretty solid job. I mean, you come in, a few days before the early signing period, you retain, I believe it was 10 guys who signed, and then you add guys, and that Ennis Rakestraw video was, if you're a fan, I mean, you're pumped up about that. I don't know if you guys saw it, but after he got that big signing from the Dallas, Texas, the cornerback, Drinkwitz just went crazy, and then they caught it on video and everything. And then that, if you're a fan, I mean, you're looking at that and you're like, this is my football coach. You're buying in a little bit more. And it's just, I think it's those little things that Drinkwitz has done well so far. I know he spoke to Tiger Club last Friday. Fortunately, none of us were able to be there. I was traveling. I think all of us were traveling.
We all were.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he's done the little things well. He's added a few talent. I think when you look at a guy like Rakestraw, he might contribute from day one, just because the cornerback positions is kind of that's how it's shaping up. But yeah, I mean, solid first recruiting class. The thing with Drinkwitz is that you don't really know how he's going to do, just because he has 1 year of head coaching experience. But so far, so good, it looks like. And then we'll see a little bit more in spring football.
How about breaking down quickly how quarterback depth chart right now? 3 names that everybody's familiar with.
Yeah.
Sean Robinson. Let's agree on pronunciation here. I meant to do this before we started.
I believe it's Basilak.
All right, let's go.
Is it Basilak?
And I want to do Bazalak.
Okay, I don't think
that's
right.
wrong.
Taylor Powell's the other one.
Yeah, Taylor Powell's the other
I'm
one.
thinking of John Mozeliak, the Cardinals GM. That's my problem.
So Sean should be the projected starter going into spring ball.
TCU transfer,
and then,
dual threat guy.
Yeah, dual threat guy. Another fun little wrinkle is that Drinkwitz brought in Curtis Looper, who is Mizzou's running back coach, and he actually recruited Sean back when they were at TCU together. And Looper was actually co-offense coordinator in 17-18 when Sean Robinson was a starting quarterback. Obviously, he transferred to Mizzou, and Looper's over here. Curtis spoke pretty pretty well of him. The media had the chance to speak to the 10 assistants a couple of weeks ago, and obviously we asked Curtis about Sean, and he had some pretty good things to say about him. So I think, for all intents and purposes, I think Sean is your guy right now. Taylor Powell might get some looks, I think, and then Connor. I'm just gonna go with Connor.
Let's do it for now because
We'll get it.
it's embarrassing that they don't know how to.
We type it. We don't say it. Well, we do have to say it.
So Connor, obviously, he tore his ACL at the Arkansas game.
Right.
We're not going to get any player access, but we actually did get him at the Drinkwitz opening introductory presser for a little bit. He said that he's not going to be available for spring ball. I mean, I think that's a little unrealistic.
Well, that puts him behind,
That
really,
puts him behind,
I mean, if he's not going to be available until fall camp,
Yeah.
then I don't expect him, I mean, maybe to be part of the mix, but he's going to start at least third on the depth chart.
Yeah, and maybe back up just because he did show some good things, and he was a pretty highly rated recruit. But yeah, he got his feet wet a little bit. He showed some good things in that Arkansas game. That one drive against Georgia, Mizzou's most successful drive against Georgia, with him at under center and everything. So, and I do think it helps him though that everyone is learning a new system. Just because nobody has any clue what Drinkwitz is going to run. I mean, you can look at App State film, but at the same time, you're playing in a completely different conference with completely different talent, with a new, with realistically those who aren't your guys in terms of fit. So he might have to change it up a little bit. So I do think that helps in the quarterback situation, just kind of, zeroing it out for everyone. At the same time, it kind of sucks for Sean Robinson just because you spend a year learning a system and sitting scouting quarterback, and you have to learn a whole other one. So I think there will be some kinks, but that's what spring football is for.
I guess if there's any film to look at, it would be App State against South Carolina. They did beat the Gamecocks in addition to the Tar Heels last year. There's a little movement at wide receiver. They lost Cam Scott.
Yes.
And decided to leave, but they got the graduate transfer from Virginia Tech.
Yeah, Damon Hazelton, he was an all-ACC guy. I think people aren't speaking enough about it, I feel like. That's a really solid get. That's your number one guy right there. Yeah, that's your number one guy from day one. I mean, everyone's learning a new playbook anyway. That's your number one guy probably. And then you can add, and then they lost Jonathan Nant, they lost Jonathan Johnson. I mean, without Hazelton, I think you're looking at a wide receiving core that's a little thin. Barrett Bannister is probably your best guy, and no disrespect to Barrett, I think he's a great football player, but he's more of a slot guy. You need somebody who's going to line up out wide and be that number one guy, and I think that's Damon Hazelton. And then you have and then they brought in a ton of wide receiver recruits, so you're going to see a J.J. Hester, maybe a Jay Macklin, Chris Abrams Strain, who's from Alabama. Those guys are probably going to be figured to go into the mix. I think Hester people are very excited about for good reason. You retain him, he's a 4-star guy from Oklahoma. So yeah, it's interesting because there's not much depth, but that Hazelton guy was big, just for the future prospects for them.
Be interesting to get to know him a little bit better.
Yeah,
It will be good. All right, we're gonna have a lot to talk about over the next couple of weeks with spring football starting and Missouri basketball playing better, fighting for a postseason. Yeah, that's right.
They got to beat Vanderbilt first.
In the moment, they do have to beat Vanderbilt.
Beat Vandy, and then all your dreams are in front of you. I think. That's not
some of your dreams, right?
Some of your dreams.
What's left of your dreams?
Yes. Okay, that's a better way of putting it.
All right. So Souichi, Vahe, thanks for stopping by. That'll do it for today. Thanks for listening. Shout out to our production staff of Randy Mason, Derek Donovan, Savannah Smith, Beth Welch, and Chris Fickett. Appreciate Souichi Terada and Vahe Gregorian stopping by the studio. Please leave us a review and a rating, and we'll be back on Wednesday with another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in Kansas City every day.